I was staring at my husband's unconscious form in the hospital bed. My daughter Emma clutched my hand, her whole body trembling. "Mom, we need to run before Dad wakes up. 3 days ago, I thought we were the perfect family. But I was wrong." As a regional sales manager for a pharmaceutical company, I spent half of each month traveling. San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle. As I made my rounds along the West Coast, guilt always lingered in the corner of my mind. I blamed myself for leaving 12-year-old Emma at home, for not being there as a mother should be. But my husband David was the perfect father. As a systems engineer working from home, he never missed picking Emma up, and he handled household chores flawlessly. The neighbors called him an ideal father, and he was active at school as PTA vice president. So I felt secure focusing on work. With David there, everything would be fine. That's what I believed. But lately, something had been off with Emma. Her grades remained excellent, but her smiles had diminished. She talked to me less, and she seemed to avoid being alone with her father. On mornings when I left for business trips, when Emma said, "Have a safe trip," I sensed something frightened in her eyes. But I told myself it was just typical adolescent changes. 3 weeks ago, I came home earlier than planned from a Seattle trip and heard quiet sobbing from Emma's room. When I opened the door, Emma hastily wiped away her tears. "I'm just stuck on homework," she said. But there was a fresh bruise on her left arm. "I fell down the stairs," Emma said, looking away. I couldn't say anything. I didn't want to believe it. 2 weeks ago, a notice arrived from the bank. The balance in the savings account I'd inherited from my father had dropped from $180,000 to $23,000. When I asked David about it, he smiled calmly. "I invested it, trying to grow it for you. Don't worry, I left it with a professional." He even showed me the contract documents with the investment advisor. I felt uneasy, but I couldn't bring myself to doubt my husband. A week ago, Emma said quietly, "Mom, if I told you something really important, would you believe me?" "Of course," I answered. Emma bit her lip and murmured, "Never mind, maybe next time." I should have pressed harder then. Friday night, I received a call from the hospital at my Seattle hotel. "Your husband has been in a traffic accident. His injuries are severe. Please come immediately." With trembling hands, I booked the fastest flight and returned to San Francisco. I met my mother-in-law at the airport and embraced Emma, who'd been brought from school. Emma's face was pale, her whole body shaking. In the car, my mother-in-law said, "David was on his way to do weekend shopping. He's always so careful, too." But Emma said nothing. She just kept gripping my hand with unusual strength. At the hospital ICU, the doctor explained the situation. Head trauma, multiple fractures, comatose state. His life was saved, but they didn't know when he'd wake up. It could take days to weeks. David was wrapped in bandages, connected to a ventilator. The perfect husband I knew wasn't there. My mother-in-law collapsed crying in the waiting room. But Emma wasn't crying. She just stared at her father's hospital room door. When I tried to embrace her, Emma's body stiffened. "Emma, are you okay?" I asked. "Mom, are you staying at the hospital tonight?" Emma asked in return. "That's the plan," I answered, and Emma said, "Can I stay with you too?" Normally she would want to go home. Why did she want to be near her father? No, that wasn't it. Emma was monitoring her father. When I realized that, a chill ran down my spine. Late at night, my mother-in-law went home, leaving just Emma and me in the room. Emma sat in the chair by her father's bedside and didn't sleep at all. She kept staring at David's face, as if she couldn't take her eyes off him for even a moment. At 2 a.m., when I tried to cover Emma with a blanket, she said quietly, "Mom." Her voice was trembling. "There's something I need you to know before Dad wakes up." "What is it?" I asked, sitting down beside Emma. With shaking hands, Emma pulled a tablet from her backpack. A password-protected folder was labeled Evidence. Don't open this yet. But if Dad looks like he's going to wake up, open it right away. And then run. Emma, what are you saying? My voice began to tremble too. Emma took a deep breath and looked straight into my eyes. When you're away on business trips, Dad isn't kind. He's only kind in front of other people. My blood ran cold. I was afraid to hear Emma's next words. But Emma continued. Dad hits me. Not every day, but when you're not there. Why didn't you tell me before? I raised my voice without meaning to. Tears welled up in Emma's eyes. I couldn't tell you. Dad said if I told you, he'd put you in the hospital. Emma's voice was hoarse. I thought Dad would really do it. Because when Dad hits me, his eyes are so cold. Like I'm not even human. I embraced Emma. I'm sorry, I repeated over and over. I'm sorry I didn't notice. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. Emma cried quietly against my chest. After a while, Emma wiped her tears and started speaking again. That's not all, Mom. Dad has another family. I was speechless. I couldn't understand Emma's words. Another family. I couldn't process what that meant. 6 months ago, a photo came to Dad's phone. Dad with a woman I didn't know and a little boy. It said, family photo. Emma continued. I saw it while Dad was in the shower. But Dad caught me. He beat me really badly. Dad said it was planning a surprise party for you, and I had to keep it secret. Emma rolled up her sleeve. There were countless old bruise marks. From purple discoloration to yellowing ones that were healing. My daughter's arm was covered with a record of violence. But I knew it was a lie. Emma's voice had a calmness beyond her 12 years. Because after that, Dad started going away on what he called business trips on weekends. He never went when you were home. So I investigated. I found Dad's old tablet and tracked the location data. Phoenix, Arizona. Always the same address. Emma's eyes held not fear, but determination. Then I started recording. Every time Dad hit me, yelled at me, all of it. Emma pointed to the tablet. I also recorded about your money. Dad was on the phone with someone. He said if he withdrew another $50,000, the plan would be complete. I trembled. The $180,000 inheritance. The only legacy my father left me. The reason it had disappeared. It wasn't an investment. It was fraud. Emma, you've been carrying this alone for 6 months. I cupped my daughter's face in both hands. You must have been so scared. Emma nodded. But I wanted to protect you. Dad said if you found out, he'd make you disappear. He said he'd make it look like an accident. So I gathered evidence. I thought someday I could use it. Emma had endured violence while collecting evidence. To protect her mother. I was crushed by my own powerlessness. Morning came, and Saturday's light streamed through the hospital room window. I hadn't slept at all. I still didn't have the courage to look at Emma's tablet. But I could feel something crumbling loudly in my heart. The perfect husband. The ideal father. It had all been a lie. At 9 a.m., the hospital room door opened. An unfamiliar woman stood there. Pretty features, but with an exhausted expression. She was with a boy who looked about 4 years old. Excuse me, is this David Morgan's room? The woman asked anxiously. I looked at the woman. Yes, this is it. But who are you? The woman looked at me and froze. Who are you? I'm Rachel. David's wife. The color drained from the woman's face. But I'm also David's wife. A nurse in the hallway intervened in surprise. The woman named Jessica and I were moved to the waiting room. Jessica began speaking with a trembling voice. 5 years ago, I met David. He said he'd just gotten divorced and his ex-wife had custody. Jessica's voice was hoarse. 3 years ago, we got married. In Arizona. I couldn't say anything. I just listened to Jessica's words. When our son Noah was born, David was so happy. He said we finally had a real family. Jessica hugged the boy. But recently, there have been suspicious things about money. David said he worked remotely for an IT company, but some months no salary came in. Yesterday, when I got the call about the accident and called the hospital, they said his wife and daughter were already there. Jessica started crying. I was deceived, wasn't I? He never got divorced. Emma said quietly, Mom, can I show her? I nodded. Emma opened the tablet. The first audio file played. Dated 6 months ago. David's voice flowed out. Shut up, you brat. If you tell your mother, it'll be a divorce because of you. You'll destroy everything. Then a dull sound. The sound of hitting. Emma's crying continued. Jessica went pale. I clenched my fists. The next file. A phone conversation from 4 months ago. I sent Jessica $30,000. From Rachel's account. Rachel hasn't noticed. She's always on business trips, she doesn't even look at statements. David's voice was as calm as if discussing a business deal. And the third file. 2 months ago. The plan is going well. In 3 more months, I'll move all of Rachel's savings. After that, insurance money. Just make it look like an accident. I trembled. Jessica was trembling too. Emma showed evidence after evidence. Screenshots of David's bank statements. Transfer records from accounts in my name to accounts in Jessica's name. A total of $157,000. Almost all of my inheritance had flowed to this unknown woman's account. There were email files too. Exchanges between David and someone he claimed was an investment advisor. But looking at the email addresses, they were all fake accounts David had created. Self-directed emails sent to himself. To deceive me. Emma said, Mom, Dad was trying to kill us. He said he'd make it look like an accident. This accident, Dad was driving drunk. Emma continued. I heard the paramedics talking. They said his blood alcohol content was twice the legal limit. But Dad doesn't drink. At least not in front of people. Emma's eyes were cold. I understood everything. David had tried to stage his own accidental death. A plan to get insurance money and run away with Jessica. But it failed, and he ended up critically injured himself. I took a deep breath. And cold determination settled in my chest. Jessica, you're a victim too. I looked into her eyes and said. Jessica nodded while crying. Let's work together. We'll end all of this before he wakes up. Emma gripped my hand. Mom, I'll help too. Saturday afternoon, I moved immediately. There was no time to be swept up in emotions. Emma had endured for 6 months. As a mother, I had to protect my daughter this time. The first call I made was to Margaret Chen, a family law attorney I'd been referred to by a friend. Despite it being Saturday, she told me to come to her office right away. At Margaret's office, I showed her Emma's tablet. After listening to the recordings and looking at the photos, she frowned. This isn't just a divorce case. Margaret said quietly but firmly. There's bigamy, fraud, child abuse, even possible attempted murder. First, we'll back up all of Emma's evidence on the law firm's server. Then we'll report to the police and Child Protective Services. Margaret was already moving. She also introduced me to a private investigator. Tom Harrison, a former FBI agent. "Give me 48 hours, I'll expose all his lies," Tom said. Jessica offered to return to her home in Arizona. She said she'd investigate all of David's belongings. She too was both a victim and someone who wanted to know the truth. We promised to stay in touch. Sunday night, Tom called. His voice held tension. "Rachel, please sit down. What I'm about to tell you is shocking. David Morgan's real name is David Mitchell." Tom began his report matter-of-factly. "He has an arrest record for fraud in New York 10 years ago. After being released on probation, he changed his name. His first marriage may also have been bigamous. We've obtained information about another victim woman in New Jersey." My mind went blank. This wasn't a crime of chance. David was a serial con artist who had systematically deceived women. "We tracked the money flow." Tom continued. "Of your $180,000 inheritance, $157,000 was transferred to an account in the Cayman Islands. From there, small amounts were transferred to Jessica's account. Probably to make Jessica look like an accomplice. The remaining $23,000 was converted to cash and stored in David's hidden safe. Jessica found it. There was actually $45,000 in cash hidden. It probably includes money stolen from other victims too. We also investigated the abuse of Emma. We obtained records from the school nurse's office. Over the past year, she came in 7 times for unexplained bruises. Her homeroom teacher also testified that she'd noticed Emma seemed frightened recently. About the accident. Tom's voice darkened. Police blood tests showed blood alcohol content twice the legal limit. However, there are also traces of tampering with the car's brakes. It's highly likely he was trying to stage his own death. The insurance beneficiary had also been changed from you to Jessica in advance. He probably planned to kill you in a staged accident and get the insurance money. But for some reason the plan went wrong, and he ended up in the accident himself. I gripped the phone. David had tried to kill me. Emma too. All for money. Monday morning, the police contacted me. They said there was an inquiry from New Jersey. A woman named Sarah Williams had seen news of David's accident and contacted the police. Sarah was 42. I spoke with her via video call. Her eyes held deep sadness and, at the same time, anger. 8 years ago, I married David. Sarah began speaking quietly. But one day he suddenly disappeared. He ran off with my savings of $90,000. I reported it to the police, but they never found him. My daughter Lily was abused by David. Sarah's voice trembled. She's 16 now, but she still goes to therapy. The emotional scars are deep. I was horrified. David had done the same thing 8 years ago. Deceive women, marry them, steal their money, abuse their children, and then disappear. He'd been repeating this pattern. Sarah, $90,000. Me, $180,000. Jessica didn't have as much direct financial damage, but she'd been deceived for 5 years. Total damages exceeded $270,000. 3 child victims. Lily, Emma, Noah. Monday afternoon, we gathered in a hospital conference room. Emma and me. Jessica and Sarah via video call. Attorney Margaret. Detective Lisa Park from the Police Family Crimes Unit. A caseworker from Child Protective Services. And an FBI federal fraud investigator. Detective Park spoke. We will charge David Morgan, real name David Mitchell, with the following offenses: bigamy, fraud across multiple states, embezzlement, multiple counts of child abuse, attempted murder, and federal fraud. As soon as he regains consciousness, we will execute the arrest warrant. Margaret continued. Ms. Rachel, will begin emergency divorce proceedings. Will complete all legal procedures while David is comatose. Asset seizure, complete termination of parental rights, restraining order. We'll prepare everything. The FBI agent said, we've frozen the Cayman Islands account. Full recovery is possible. We're also starting a nationwide investigation to see if there are other victims. The Child Protective Services casework worker spoke gently to Emma. Emma, you were truly brave. From now on, we'll protect you. All contact with David will be prohibited. I looked at Jessica and Sarah through the screen. 3 women. All 3 had nearly had their lives destroyed by the same man. But we didn't give up. He nearly destroyed our lives. I said to both of them. But it's over now. When he wakes up, what's waiting isn't our revenge. It's justice. Jessica nodded on the other side of the screen. Sarah nodded too, tears streaming down her face. Emma gripped my hand. We're not alone. There are 3 victims. But that isn't weakness, it's strength. 3 women had stood up to protect 3 children. The empire of lies that David had built over years was about to crumble. And witnessing that collapse would be the women he had most belittled. Tuesday morning, David regained consciousness. The first thing he saw was a police officer standing in the room. David Morgan, you're under arrest. Handcuffs were placed on him. David was confused. Rachel, what's going on? Rachel. But I wasn't there. I was with Emma at the law office, preparing for the next procedures. Instead, Detective Park informed him. All your wives will testify. Bank records, recordings, witnesses, we have everything. David applied for bail, but it was denied. Crimes across multiple states, flight risk, and above all, potential harm to children. The judge allowed no bail whatsoever. 3 months later, the day came to stand in court. I wore a black suit, holding Emma's hand. Emma wore a black dress too. We weren't victims. We were survivors. That's what I told myself. Jessica and Sarah also came to the courtroom. Jessica had left Noah with her mother-in-law. Sarah had brought her daughter Lily. 16-year-old Lily still carried the wounds from 8 years ago, but today she looked firmly ahead. David entered the courtroom. Wearing an orange prison jumpsuit, handcuffed. The image of the once perfect husband wasn't there. He was haggard, his beard grown out, his eyes hollow. He looked at us. And looked away. The prosecutor was a woman. A stern-faced attorney in her 40s named Elizabeth Chong. She told us, this trial isn't just for you. It's for all victims. I was the first witness. I stood at the witness stand and placed my hand on the Bible. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth? I do. Prosecutor Chong began questioning. Ms. Morgan, please tell us about your married life with the defendant. I took a deep breath. And began speaking. David was the perfect husband. At least, that's how he appeared. While I was away on business trips, he took perfect care of our daughter. The neighbors called him an ideal father. But it was all a lie. I talked about the $180,000 in savings inherited from my father. How David said he would invest it. But in reality, he transferred it to an account in the Cayman Islands and used it for himself. How he kept deceiving me. There's evidence that the defendant tried to kill you, isn't there? Prosecutor Chong asked. Yes. My voice didn't tremble. He planned to kill me in a staged accident to get the insurance money. But the plan went wrong, and he ended up in the accident. David's attorney tried cross-examination. But bank records, emails, recordings, everything had been submitted as evidence. There was nothing he could do. The next witness was Jessica. She testified with trembling but firmness. David told me he was divorced from his first wife. We got married in Arizona 3 years ago. But it was bigamy. He deceived me too. Jessica talked about her son Noah. How David pretended to be a good father, but was ruthless when it came to money. How her savings gradually disappeared too. Sarah's testimony froze the entire courtroom. 8 years ago, David suddenly vanished from my daughter Lily and me, taking my savings of $90,000. Lily was 8 years old at the time. She was routinely abused by David. What was Lily's condition? Prosecutor Chong asked gently. Sarah cried. She was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. She still has nightmares. She's afraid of men. Even after 8 years, the wounds haven't healed. Then came Emma's turn to testify. Emma stood at the witness stand. The 12-year-old girl had the attention of the entire courtroom. But Emma didn't flinch. Prosecutor Chong asked gently, Emma, can you tell us about life with your father? Emma took a deep breath. Then began speaking in a clear voice. Dad hit me when Mom wasn't there. There were various reasons. When I forgot homework. When I didn't listen to Dad. But most often, it was when I hadn't done anything. The courtroom stirred. The judge called for order. Emma continued. Dad said it was discipline. But it wasn't discipline. When Dad hit me, his eyes were so cold. Like he was looking at something he hated. You didn't tell your mother, did you? No. Emma nodded. Dad said if I told Mom, he'd put her in the hospital. I thought Dad would really do it. Because Dad could hit me so easily. I thought he could hurt Mom easily too. But you started gathering evidence. Yes. Starting 6 months ago. Emma pointed to the tablet. I started recording. When Dad hit me, yelled at me, when he was on the phone talking about bad things. I recorded everything. Why did you do that? Because I wanted to protect Mom. Tears shone in Emma's eyes. Mom was working so hard to protect me. So I thought it was my turn to protect Mom. Silence flowed through the courtroom. Some of the jurors were crying. Emma's recordings were played in court. David's voice echoed. Shut up, you brat. If you tell your mother, it'll be a divorce because of you. You'll destroy everything. Then the sound of hitting. Emma's crying. Another recording. The plan is going well. In 3 more months, I'll move all of Rachel's savings. After that, insurance money. Just make it look like an accident. David bowed his head. His attorney couldn't say anything either. As an expert witness, a child psychologist testified. Emma has suffered severe trauma. However, remarkably, her love for her mother and protective instinct supported her. For a 12-year-old to collect evidence this calmly is extremely rare. A banking expert explained the money flow. David systematically continued stealing from 3 women. The total exceeds $270,000. An insurance expert testified about the insurance fraud plan. David took out a $500,000 life insurance policy with Ms. Rachel as the insured. He was the beneficiary. And there's evidence he was planning murder disguised as an accident. An FBI agent testified about David's past. His real name is David Mitchell. Arrest record for fraud in New York 10 years ago. After release on probation, he changed his name and fled. After that, he continued deceiving multiple women. The evidence was overwhelming. David's attorney tried to argue mental state issues, but the prosecution immediately countered. This was premeditated crime. He was perfectly sane. That's precisely why he could deceive people so skillfully. In closing arguments, Prosecutor Chong looked at the jury. The defendant deceived 3 women. Abused 3 children. Stole over $270,000. And attempted murder for insurance money. This isn't a betrayal of love. This is premeditated crime. Give the defendant the punishment he deserves. The jury reached a verdict in just 2 hours. Guilty on all charges. On sentencing day, the judge looked at David with a stern expression. You used trust to hurt innocent people. Especially your own daughter. This is unforgivable. 25 years imprisonment. No parole. Everyone in the courtroom sighed with relief. I embraced Emma. Jessica and Sarah hugged each other. David was led away. Without looking back. The mask of the perfect husband had completely shattered. A year passed since the sentencing. I purchased a new house by the ocean in California. The inheritance had been fully recovered, and with additional compensation added, I was financially stable. But I'd regained something far more precious. My daughter's smile. Emma had regained her brightness. She continued therapy, gradually healing her emotional wounds. Now she had many friends at school. On weekends, Jessica and Noah came to visit. Sometimes Sarah and Lily visited too. Saturday morning, Emma was laughing at Noah's voice as he played in the yard. Mom, Noah wants me to teach him soccer. Emma looked genuinely happy. That's fine, go ahead. I smiled. Jessica was drinking coffee with me in the kitchen. I can't believe it, what happened a year ago seems like a dream. Jessica said, looking out the window. Back then, I thought my life was over. But now it feels like it's begun anew. He nearly destroyed us, but we didn't break. I said. Rather, we became stronger. Jessica nodded. I'm so glad I met you and Emma. And Sarah. I feel like we've become a real family. We weren't blood related. But we were family. We'd experienced the same pain, stood up together, and supported each other. That was a bond stronger than any blood relation. In the living room hung a photograph of 3 women and 3 children. Taken together last Christmas. Everyone was smiling. Real smiles. Emma now keeps a diary. She started on her therapist's recommendation, but Emma had grown to like it. One day, Emma showed me part of her diary. Dad took many things from me. Security, trust, a childhood. But there are things Dad couldn't take. My love for Mom, courage, and hope. I didn't lose. Mom didn't lose either. We won. Reading those words, I cried. Emma was truly a strong child. No, she'd had to become strong. That was sad, but at the same time, something to be proud of. David sent 1 letter from prison. Words of apology were written. But I tore it up without reading. I didn't show it to Emma either. His words were no longer necessary for us. Standing on the oceanside terrace, I listened to the sound of the waves. Thinking back, my daughter's words in that hospital room changed everything. Mom, run. But I didn't run. Emma didn't run either. We fought. And we won. What is a real family? Not blood. Not a marriage certificate. Protecting each other, sharing truth, standing up together. That's family. Emma was waving from the yard. Mom, look, Noah scored a goal. I waved back. Coming now. A new life is here, now. The pain of the past doesn't disappear. But we can carry it while still walking forward. Together with Emma. Together with Jessica, Noah, Sarah, and Lily. I smiled and headed to the yard. The children's laughter echoed on the ocean breeze. It was the sound of hope. The sound of a new beginning.